taking from that is that clinicians having the confidence to map out the client's journey that we are probably already delivering and implementing, but not necessarily articulating to clients in the clinic, to the team, to front desk, and certainly on our website and marketing material. So it's getting the confidence to draw down on a piece of paper, on a graph, Celia's graph or your own version of it, and then start communicating what that means within your clinic. So clients know, like, and trust you and feel safe in your hands.
This is the 𝐲𝐨𝐮𝐫𝐬 podcast experience for health professionals that mean business. So wherever you are in the world, listen as we discuss everything you need for you and your health business to survive and thrive. Thanks for listening.
Good morning and welcome. So today I'm joined by Dave James, who you can see below in red, Celia Champion, who's in fuchsia, and Justin Blake, who is up in Ireland. Good morning, everybody.
Morning. I didn't realise Ireland was a colour.
I know, as I said it, I recognised my own.
The Ireland really brings out your eyes, Justin.
Too many weeks of this lockdown now. Today we're going to be talking about the client journey, and Celia is going to kick us off with that because she has it beautifully drawn and graphed out. So she's going to describe what it means to have a client journey and what her vision or view is of a client journey, and we'll take the conversation there to explore how that might need to be reconsidered as we reopen or expand our opening, and whether we think there are any modifications or changes that we need to be making. So, Celia, do you want to take us off by describing your graph? Gosh, I'm losing all my words.
Sure. I mean, I think our graph kind of came about from just chatting with some of our clients and talking about the journey that patients take within their clinic. And generally, people start on a certain level of well-being, and then something happens, maybe they have an injury and their well-being declines, and they get to a point where they can't cope with it on their own, so they ring up the clinic, make an appointment. Their well-being might carry on declining, and because maybe they have to wait a little while for the appointment. And in some cases, sometimes they have their first appointment, their first treatment, and they get worse before they start getting better and before they start responding to the treatment. And they then start responding to the treatment, and they get to a point where they feel better than they did when they first came to the clinic. And at that point, it's really a crucial point in their journey where they might make a decision to carry on with the treatment, to stop the treatment. Now, what we found is that if the conversation with the patient has been, if communication has been really, really good about the journey that the patient's going to be taking, they'll buy into the treatment plan that the practitioner is recommending. But often what happens is the practitioner might overwhelm them with a lot of information at the beginning and tell them what they need to be doing, and not kind of reiterate that along the way, and also not talk about the fact that they might get out of pain before the treatment is finished. So very often a patient gets to a point where the pain is reduced, and obviously that's like really good for the patient. But at that point, they might make the decision and think, well, actually, I'm out of pain now. I don't need any more treatment. And I'm sure we all know that actually sometimes you'll get to a point where you're out of pain, but the practitioner knows that they still need a few more treatments to maintain that. Or, I'm not a practitioner, so I don't know the technicalities of it. But I have been a patient, and I have experienced that where I've got out of pain, and for one reason or another, I haven't gone back to the practitioner, and a couple of weeks later, I'm back in pain. So I think it's really, really, really important that there's that communication, but also linking the outcomes for the patient. What is it that they want to carry on doing? So you might, starting with the patient at the starting point, you'll be talking about what is the pain preventing them from doing. I can't do my park runs. Okay, so we want to get you back to doing park runs regularly. We don't want to get you back to being able to do one park run and then suddenly you're back to square one again. We want you to get back to doing park runs regularly. So you have this kind of graph that goes, you're at a starting point and you kind of declining because you've injured yourself, and then you start having the treatment and you start responding and you go up and up and up. We want you to carry on going up. We don't want you to be going back down. So that, and in today's climate where we are right now, I don't think that hasn't changed at all. In fact, I think there's even a greater risk of you relapsing when you can't have that hands-on treatment and that regular treatment. So there's almost like you almost need to be checking in with your patients more regularly now to make sure that they're doing the exercises, that they're doing the self-massage techniques that you've taught them, they're doing whatever they need to be doing regularly, and that they're responding appropriately. And they're not getting to a point where they think, oh, well, this feels much better, I'm off and doing loads and loads of exercise again. So if anyone wants our Wellbeing Curve, I'm really happy to email it to you. So if you kind of drop Kate a line and say, oh, can we please have a copy of the Wellbeing Curve, I'm really happy to send that to you, and it's in our book as well.
Thank you. And I think obviously one of the great risk factors at the moment is the change in people's lifestyle, which always is a trigger or quite often a trigger for pain. And even if people are keeping active, it's active sedentary. You're active for the period of time you're out riding your bike and gone for a run, but actually the majority of your day is quite probably more sedentary than it would normally be. So it's quite, for a lot of people, it's quite a big change in their daily habits and patterns and movements and postures. I think from everyone that I've spoken with and practitioners I've spoken with, I think there are people that are doing a lot more exercise than they used to right now, and they don't know what stretches to do before and what stretches to do after. And I mean, I'll put my hands up. I'm terrible with doing, the warm up before and the kind of cool down after. And I've been, kind of been doing park runs for ages now. So, I think there are a lot of people that are kind of new to it. I mean, I go out into our forest behind our house, and I've never seen so many people out there now. And you can see new runners, and probably a lot of them aren't actually doing. They don't know what to do before and after.
No, there's a huge there is a huge new boom. And there will continue to be, because in media for the last couple of months, it's just all been about getting fitter, healthier, and stronger of your immunity to fight this. I mean, that's the whole media angle of how we're going to sort of get through this. So yeah, I mean, I've seen. I was talking to the guy in the local bike shop, and he's never been busier. With people coming out and buying new stuff and things. You can see it. People out pounding the pavements, out running, cycling. It's there's a huge amount. So I think that's a very positive thing for healthcare businesses, because that's going to mean there's going to be more patients. People are also going to then be more aware of their health and maybe seek now to get things resolve for problems that they've had before. Maybe that's highlighted, but yeah, there's a huge boom in health and fitness now, which will continue with this.
I also think one of the most important things that about the client journey and about the whole client experience is those moments of wow, those moments where the client really recognises that you understand them. And one of the critical points is, even on that first phone call, that you're understanding their emotional reason why they even contact you in the first place. And for me, I wonder if that's going to be something that we're going to get more honesty more quickly, because people are getting more open about talking about health. And I also wonder if it sometimes is simply going to be, I need to be healthy because this is my best insurance policy at the moment, is to look after my health, rather than necessarily be, I want to cycle John O'Groats or climb Everest or whatever. It could quite simply be.
Most people, when you have that first appointment and you're trying to get into the nitty gritty of why they've come after 6 months, a year, 2 years with this sort of problem, why is today the day? Yeah, they normally don't. It's normally maybe 3 or 4 or 5
He's frozen there, isn't he?
Oh, yeah.
No, he's back. Eddie's back. He's back.
So 3, go again, Justin. It's normally 3, 4 or 5 sessions in, you start to unravel what's perhaps really going on for the client and what their true goal really are.
He's not put euros in the meter again, has he?
I think that, I mean, when I speak to practitioners, that's often like the penny drops for them, and they think, I don't do enough of that. I'm not curious enough with a patient. I don't ask enough about what they're wanting to get back to, what their aspirations are. And that's really, really critical. That should be at the forefront. It's like, okay, so you've come to me with knee pain or foot ache or whatever you've come to me with. What is it getting in the way of? What is it preventing you from doing? Yeah. And I mean, I had an appointment with a therapist. It was shortly after I turned 40, actually, which is now frighteningly nearly 10 years ago. But I had this appointment with, and I'd gone with kind of aches and pains, and she had said to me, she said, so you've just turned 40, you know, do you have any kind of milestones that you want to achieve? And you know, it was kind of like that turning 40 question. And I kind of said to her, I said, you know, I always wanted to do a sprint triathlon, but there's absolutely no way I'm going to be doing that. I can't run to save my life, I told her. And she was just like, but you're really fit, you cycle, you swim, you know, why are you going to let not being able to run get in the way? And she said, come on, you can do this. And it kind of like, it was like a bit like she kind of said to me, of course you can do it. Like she just believed in me. And I was like, Anyway, she introduced me to a personal trainer who actually taught me how to run. I mean, he literally got me into, I mean, I used to do sprints and things at school, you know, like the 100 meter and the 200 meter and the hurdles and all that stuff, like quick runs, but put me on cross country and I was like, just couldn't do it at all. I was just like run for 2 minutes and I was like gasping for air. Anyway, he said, come on, let's get you on the treadmill. Let's do 5 minutes. I'm like, 5 minutes? Are you joking? And I got on the treadmill and literally 1 minute in, he was like, stop. And I just did not have a good running technique. So he taught me how to run. She looked after me. She made sure that all my muscles were, you know, kind of all, I don't know, she did whatever she did. She made sure that everything was all hunky-dory. And I did my first sprint triathlon. And since then, I've done, you know, I started doing park runs. So now I'm on, well, now with lockdown, I'm not so on track anymore to do my 100 by the time I turn 50, but I will, you know, get close to it. But I just kind of look at it and I think she asked me, you know, what's the pain getting in the way of, what are your goals, what are your aspirations? And I kind of shared something with her that I kind of thought I'd given up on. And I think there are a lot of patients out there that have given up on doing things because society has said, well, you can't run, or society said to old age pensioners, you know, you're 70, you're 80, you're going to have to put up with back pain. It's just one of those things. And I think that society often has, you know, there's certain things that are just not true that that therapists know. Well, actually, I can help with that. I can get you to do that. I can support you through that.
There's probably a lot of conversation there around how that initial consultation and conversation, the questions you ask at the beginning of the Wellbeing Curve and the customer journey, how it positively influences that process. So it either keeps people on board for the time they need to be there. And I was going to say longer, but it is for the, you know, they're there for the time they need to be there, but also at the speed that they recover around that Wellbeing Curve too. And no, those questions at the beginning are powerful. And one I always used to ask was, you know, what would be a good outcome of your time with me? And whereas people might come into the clinic and I would go, well, obviously you're coming in with this problem, so you want this treatment. And actually, they might not want treatment. They might just want somebody to confirm their diagnosis or confirm the thoughts of another therapist or practitioner, or they might want something completely different. But it was that initial consultation, questioning and listening, and that whole conversation and collaboration which made a huge difference.
And I think just even it might not come out in the first consultation. I mean, they might come to you and they're just in so much pain, they just want to get out of pain. And it might started alleviating that pain, that you can then they're in a better place to have that conversation. So I think it's personalised and individual for every single patient. But I think the therapist has the duty of care to really understand how they can support that patient right from the beginning all the way through, and share that with the patient. You know, it's still going to be the patient's choice. You know, you might so I know that the clinics that will get the patient out of pain and sort out the injury that they've come in with, but they then can help the patient beyond that. And it will always, if you believe that you can help a patient further, then it's sharing that information. It's not pushing your future treatment and maintenance and preventative care on them. It's just sharing that information that is a possibility for them. A lot of patients don't understand that or don't realize that you can get them beyond getting them out of pain.
Yeah, that's really interesting. A couple of conversations I've had this week around. And I remember it from my practice, you would have a patient who was in your clinic for treatment A or for maintenance or whatever they were in for, and then they'd been to see another therapist for a problem which you could solve. And I always used to kind of sit there afterwards and go, well, what is it I haven't told you about, about the services I offer? Where is my marketing maybe fallen over, or maybe where is my communication, or maybe where I haven't joined the dots that you've been having those problems, and I haven't kind of stepped in and said, actually, that might be something I can help with.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that personalisation piece is massive. But I think also as well, alongside that personalisation, there's a real need to have almost like a central spine of what would usually happen, but then be able to deviate from that at different points. So that spine gets a bit longer, it's got more bits which come into it, it maybe deviates a little bit further. But that whole personalisation piece is massive.
Justin, this comes reflect back a little bit to what we were talking about last week. So I'm very conscious of increasing transparency for the clients before they even contact us. So we've been just talking about that the clinician takes responsibility for trying to understand the client's emotional why. It should also happen on the front desk as the first point of reference, so that the client, whether they answer it then or not, is aware of the safety, that their confidence to explore the emotional reason why is valid and valuable. But in our sales and marketing, just reflecting back to last week, I very much believe we're going to start needing to get a lot more transparent on what it is we're going to help the client achieve and how we're going to help them achieve it, and putting this client journey out visibly before the client even picks up the phone.
Well, that's one of the main things, is that the client journey doesn't start with the first phone call or the first appointment. It starts normally when they're sitting Googling at night, my back is sore. That's where the client journey starts. The first interaction on your website, which could take 6 days, 6 months, 6 years for them to arrive in the clinic. And it's the whole how you talk to them and pre-frame them. And if you're sending them pre-reports and things, that sort of pre-frames them into what they can expect from your clinic, what's going to be different from other clinics. That's where the client journey starts. And so that know, like, and trust, and building of you as the authority or the expert is all done. That pre-frames the patient before they even get into the clinic with you. And especially if you're sending them stories about just people just like them and what their journey was like, how many weeks and things. Because that, I think, especially now, is people are very, very keen and very, today's the day to get the back or the knee sorted. Rolling around multiple clinics, who can get me in first? I'm going to get it done now. And those sort of patients are quite keen at the start, but after 2 or 3 sessions tend to sort of, because again, they weren't sort of told what was going to happen. So they're very, very keen at the start, a couple of appointments in, and then it's like, you've seen them for they think they can fix a chronic foot or ankle problem in 2 or 3 sessions. Yeah, you can give pain relief, but to get it properly fixed, it's going to take 6 to 10 weeks, 12 weeks of And as you say, it's just, the pain levels will drop, but can you go and do that park run? Can you play the 18 holes of golf or the 18 holes the next day if you're away for the weekend? I mean, those are the milestones that they want to be achieving. But especially now with what do you mean you can't fix this in a week? Oh, no. Again, but that's possibly a lot of things. If your marketing message or if your website message, your practice message is just all about getting you out of pain, then that's what they'll want. Or if you have a more holistic rehabilitation message beforehand, I think then that pre-frames the patients. But just managing expectations. Again, a lot of clients that you see have very minimal. I mean, they don't know how healing occurs or what inflammation is or the difference between paracetamol and ibuprofen and how that's going to affect their. I mean, there's, it's like talking to a 6-year-old in terms of they don't know what's going to happen, but you can do an awful lot of that before they even arrive in your clinic. And as you say, even on the first, when they've heard your marketing message, and even on the first phone call, how you interact with them and how you're going to sort of plan and possibly information you'll send them pre the appointment, so that they so that they'll be more aware of it. Yeah, and within that you can talk about the other services that you provide. Yeah, there's nothing worse than, as you say, Dave, scratching your head going, why come they didn't come to see me for that? It's like, because they didn't know you did it. They just thought you did X. They came to your knee pain page and came for your knee stuff, came for your there. And then next week you find out they've gone to see another practitioner to get their SI joint fixed. You never mentioned that to me.
So what's
a lot of it.
We're all very much on the same page, saying that actually clinics are only really going to survive at the moment if they get their business fundamentals in place. And that's by understanding, yes, clinically, you've probably invested a huge amount in your clinical expertise and clinical competence. Now you need to make sure you're investing in helping the client understand that, helping the client be able to interpret that. So that's back to where we started last week with the avatars, and really being transparent with having a mapped out client journey so clients know what you're going to help them achieve and how you're going to help them achieve it, and then deliver that and listen to them along the way. Now, Celia, I know on your, you talk about other, I can't remember if you call them moments of wow or moments of...
moments of truth?
Moments of...
Truth.
Moments of truth, yeah, I wasn't sure it was moments of... So Justin's obviously very heavily emphasising that as soon as somebody hits your website, as soon as somebody telephones you, these are quite differentiating points. And obviously as soon as they come into the clinic to meet a clinician. You're also describing that actually once people started to get better, that's a slightly precarious area because they haven't yet achieved their full potential.
Yeah.
And that having really good communication there is critical.
Because we know, you know what the patient journey is going to be. You know what your knee rehab needs to look like, or your plantar fascial or your back rehabilitation program to get them to run the marathon needs to be like. But you've got to communicate that with, and does that match with what they want as well?
I think every step of the patient journey is a moment of truth. And a moment of truth is where the patient makes a decision whether they're going to come to you, whether they're going to rebook with you, whether they're going to recommend you, or whether they're going to kind of go and say, oh, actually, I went to that physio and they were I went for a few sessions and a few weeks later I was back to square one. But interestingly, on the websites, I think that's a huge moment of truth. People's attention span. There's a guy by the name of Eric Coleman, and he does a lot of work on digital marketing. And every year he puts out a little YouTube clip of all the statistics of digital marketing. And one of his one of the slides that he shares is that goldfish have an attention span of 8 seconds, and humans have an attention span of 7. Now, when people get into your website, you've got to have that, you've got to bear that in mind. And I think 7 seconds is being generous as well, because if you get onto a website and it looks rubbish, you're going to go straight off it, and probably like in less than 7 seconds. I was speaking to an osteopath that I'm working with, and he was really, really proud of some of the testimonials that he got from his patients. And the testimonials that he had like highlighted on his website were, I went to this osteopath and he got me sorted in 1 treatment, and he got me sorted in 2 treatments. Like literally, like night and day, I went in agony and I came out and I was absolutely fine. And I was like, so I said to him, so is that the normal patient journey? And he's like, no, that's not the norm, but I mean, fantastic that I got them better. And I said, well, that's the expectation. By putting those testimonials, by highlighting those testimonials, you're putting out this expectation to patients that you'll get them better in 1 or 2 treatments. And if that's not the norm, then do you want that to be the highlight of how your clinic runs? Because actually, if that's not true for patients, they're going to come into you, they're going to expect to get better in 1 or 2 treatments. And then when they don't, that's a big moment of truth for them.
And that's where a lot of practices rely on word of mouth recommendations. And possibly what worked for that patient who recommended their friend may not work for them, but they're expecting the same. And a lot of people think that, I've got a recommendation, that's great. But they may be completely different. Usually is a completely different sort of treatment scenario. So their expectations of being referred in, and he fixed me in 2 sessions. If it's not the same issue, then that may not sort of gel very well.
So as clinicians and clinicos, we need to be communicating with a lot more confidence how it is going to help clients and what they're aligning expectations. Dave, I also wonder what your thoughts are on I've always been slightly uncomfortable with the fact that I think by people buying session by session, we're essentially asking, that model is essentially asking clients to gamble on us clinicians, because we're not putting a commitment down in terms of the outcome, because a client is ultimately buying the outcome rather than whether it takes us perhaps 2 sessions, 10 sessions to get there. They want to get better. So I don't know what your views are on that, and overall what your views are on clinicians communicating and owning the outcome as part of the partnership with the client.
It's a really good question. I think certainly if we're looking at routine care in podiatry, it tends to be almost like a pay-as-you-go situation. Someone comes in, you maintain the health of their feet, they pay, and they book and come back again. I think when we're looking at things like musculoskeletal packages, or we're looking at things like nail care packages or verruca treatment packages, it makes much more sense to say to someone, this is how much you pay, this is the number of sessions I'm going to provide over this period of time, and this is the outcome we're looking for. And I've always found those to be really useful. And what they also do is, once someone's paid that investment, that fee at the beginning, the money conversation is then off the table. Then you can actually focus on getting down to helping them get better over that period of time. And if you've done your research and you know how many appointments people generally need on average, you know what the timing's like on average, and you can communicate that, and you've got the data to show that, then those packages of care work really, really well. In terms of taking responsibility for the outcome, I think that's a really difficult one, because if you take verrucas, for example, if I treat a verruca, I don't know how a verruca is going to respond. I've got an idea that if we use something on it which will create an inflammatory process, and then the body responds to that and the verruca will go, then we're probably going to be within a good chance. And we know that will happen within a set number of weeks or months on average. It can be quicker, it can be longer, and it's communicating that. But I think sometimes there are some things which are really difficult to say, I 100% guarantee we're going to fix this. And I mean, I remember I did a video and a bit of a vlog on this ages ago, where I always wanted, as a clinical practitioner, to fix 100% of people 100% of the time. That was always my goal. And I realized quite quickly that actually it never happens. You know, maybe it's about 70% of people that you can actually fix over a period of time, because some of those people will either fall off the radar because it doesn't work quick enough for them, or some people will go to somebody else who can maybe fix that problem better, or maybe you refer them on. And maybe 100% of people do get better, but just not with my hands on them. So I think it's really difficult to offer those guarantees. But that becomes part of that whole conversation about what is possible based on the evidence of what you're treating, the time you're going to have together. And also, and I think this is for me is a big thing, is it's explaining and getting people to understand that actually a lot of the stuff which happens during that whole treatment process doesn't go on in the clinic with you, it actually goes on outside. There's a real collaboration piece in there. So yeah, that's a really interesting question. And I probably haven't given you a distinct or definitive answer on that, but yeah, and that's one I suppose which will plague me for years to come. But yeah, it's a really good question.
Justin, what are your views on clients buying outcome versus the time that as clinicians we can tend to sell? It can slightly feel like a mismatch. It does to me. So that we're selling time, but clients are wanting an outcome.
Yeah, I think a lot of again, it's back to the, you know, what are you going to get when you get your credit card out? What the outcome is you're buying. Yeah, certainly packages changed the way we're working a lot of business, a lot of practices, because if you don't have to be like, why am I getting my credit card out again every week? I come in here. Is this worthwhile? And again, it's understanding that whole how to get the kids looked after, to come to the appointment, to get the parking, to do the thing, to come in, and all this whole journey that the patient gets on just to even be in the clinic for the 20 minutes, the half an hour, the hour session, and then the exercises to go home with. Again, it's why am I here again this week, and what am I doing this for? And so packages make a huge, huge difference for that, because as Dave said, it takes the money aspect out of it. And now we're focusing on the outcome. So yeah, it makes a huge difference to a lot of practices. But again, pre-framing what the journey is going to be like and the benefits of that, and then the milestones sort of reached, rather than just it's not that they don't understand, we just don't communicate it well enough. We understand what the journey is going to be to get to the park run, to get back to play 18 holes pain free and be able to get up the next day and play again. But I think it's a communicating that and what the best outcome or what they want from it as well is really the important thing.
Celia, have you seen any examples that particularly stand out in your mind of where clinics are very outcome focused for the client?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I focus a lot of my work on is getting them to think about what the outcome, what the patient's outcome, what the patient wants to be as the outcome. And just kind of talking about packages, yes, it takes the money thing out of the equation. But one thing that I've been really fascinated by having conversations with clinicians about is the frequency of care and the interval between appointments. I had a client who they were sitting on 21% of patients who were rescheduling, and they really didn't want to come across as a pushy clinic, so they didn't want to be, come across as money grabbing and pushy and kind of forceful about appointments and things. But when I started kind of questioning them about the clinical benefit of the recommendation of their interval of care, it was well, yes, that they were able to really give me a really good answer about why they recommend that patients come 3 days after their first treatment, and then a week, and then week intervals or 2 week intervals, or whatever intervals they've recommended. They were very, very passionate about the fact that this is really important for the patient, that they have the care at certain intervals so that we progress the treatment, we're building on the treatment that we've given before, etc., etc., etc. And then I kind of said, so why is it acceptable that 21% of your patients reschedule their appointments? And it all came down to they were worried about being seen to be more money focused, et cetera, et cetera. So they were thinking about the money rather than kind of saying to the patient, look, in order for you to get to doing your park runs regularly again, what we need to do is we need to see you at this point, at this point, at this point. So you're going to need 6 treatments, and then, let's book them all in. So I think there's yes, have a package of care that takes away the money problems, but actually the more important thing is what is in the best interest of the patient in terms of the frequency and interval of care. Get those appointments booked in, whether you take the money up front for that or you don't or whatever, it doesn't really matter, as long as you are treating the patient in the intervals that you believe is clinically for the best benefit of the patient.
It's really, that's a really interesting point as well. And I think podiatry does very well in terms of routine patients returning and making sure people come back. The challenge is with that line is that people slip into it's funny how everyone has a personalised kind of return period always comes back either on a 4, 6, 8, 10, 12-week return period, which kind of doesn't make sense. And I think we fall into that pattern of doing it. And maybe we fall into that pattern because actually there's not necessarily a better way of doing it. But I think it is important. Yeah, it's a very good point. It is important to be saying to people the benefits of you coming back at these time intervals are. And I think we'll see this when all the COVID stuff lifts. We'll see a lot of routine patients coming back into podiatry clinics who've gone past that time, and they'll be struggling, and maybe they'll be struggling more mentally and emotionally about it because they haven't had that regularity of treatment rather than physically. But it'd be really interesting to see.
I think it's always a lot better when you give the patients a choice. So we can do the 2 or 3 sessions to get you out of pain if that's what you want, or else we can really get this fixed by doing X, Y, and Z. What do you want?
I think the thing is that...
And then it goes back to, and then you can, and again, that goes back to the conversation you have with the patient at the 3 weeks. Well, we talked, the pain's a lot better. Great, we talked about that. And even if they've decided to go with the pain relief session, 3 or 4 sessions, then it's like, well, what's next then? Well, do you remember we talked about actually getting this properly fixed? Well, then now the pain's gone, we can do X, Y, and Z and continue on. I think we underservice patients a lot. We're all worried about as soon as you start becoming the patient. Ray Anthony told me that years ago, a guy who used to run one of the biggest orthotics labs in the UK. I think it was 2 years out of college. And once you start to become your patient's bank manager or worry what they can go to pay, then that's, so you need to stop worrying about that. The money should never be, it's never the money. It's really, really never the money, because, the person who tells you they don't have the money to fix their long-standing problem that's stopping them from lifting the grandkids or going and playing their golf or going to run, when you give them their program of care and they decide not to go with it, they're outspending at the weekend or buying stuff they don't need, if the money was a problem, there would be no debt and nobody would have credit card debt and loan debts and car finance and things. What the real worry is that they know, like, and trust you enough to come on the journey with you to get the result that they want. It's the result. Because when you get out your credit card and buy something and it arrives the next day, you know what you're getting. When you sign into your new Netflix account and you pay your 10 quid a month, you know that you're going to get Netflix on demand. When you come to a practice with a long-standing problem that needs X, Y, and Z treatment, and it's going to take how long? I thought this is just going to be fixed in a week. That's where the disconnect is. They don't know what the result is. They want the result, but how they're going to get the result, it's really never about the money. That's what I think, anyway. It's about that connection that the money should never be will be more of an issue now, but I think we think it's all about money, but it's not. It's the time. Do I like them? Are they actually telling me that what am I going to be able to get there? And again, that comes back to pre-framing and telling them about all the other people who you saw and got them back to the park run and on all those testimonies.
Wonderful. Thank you very, very much. So I think Dave, Celia and Justin's frozen again there.
I know that's what is happening.
It's because his Netflix is costing him too much. That's why he's got too much bandwidth on his internet. I'm really quite worried you're paying £10 for Netflix a month.
No, $5.99. I only signed up this week.
Oh. So that money you save, you could actually put into a therapist appointment later on.
My £4. Oh, wonderful. Thank you very much. What I'm really hearing and taking from that is that clinicians having the confidence to map out the client's journey that we are probably already delivering and implementing, but not necessarily articulating to clients in the clinic, to the team, to front desk, and certainly on our website and marketing material. So it's getting the confidence to draw down on a piece of paper, on a graph, Celia's graph or your own version of it, and then start communicating what that means within your clinic. So clients know, like, and trust you and feel safe in your hands. Next week, we're going to be talking about the risks and liabilities that we need to mitigate as hopefully we'll have some more information from Boris about the reopening schedule, and we'll focus certainly on hygiene whilst we have Dave and Justin's podiatry disinfecting experience with us, and we'll see what else has come up once we've had Boris's announcement. The week after that, we'll very much be addressing finances, as managing cash flow and clinic financials is going to be critical has been critical this last quarter and will continue to be critical over the next quarter, 6 months and going forwards. So have a great week, and we will see you all next Wednesday. Take care. Bye-bye for now.
Bye.